Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Andy Arnold. I'm a relatively new member to the club here. I was asked to give a safety presentation this month, so today we're going to be talking about propeller safety. Some of you might already know there was an accident over at Cookfield on the southeast side of Wichita, close to home. They did have a propeller injury out there, actually a fatality. Unfortunately, their operation is very, very similar to ours. We're recreational. We have senior veterans working around aircraft that are running, as well as new trainees and new members, and maybe people that are coming back that haven't been around lately. And so we have the same threat that they have. And unfortunately, they got caught and had an incident. Um, and so obviously, we'd like to prevent that here. And so we're going to talk about propeller safety. All right. I always like to start presentations with who the heck am I, and how dare I tell you what to do? Um, So I say that kind of lightheartedly, but I'd like to introduce myself a little bit here. Um, so I have about an 18-year aviation career at this point. Started work at the local airport in Western Kansas when I was a junior in high school, and have never been out of aviation since then. Um, I currently have an airline transport pilot license, type rated in a Hawker 800. Flew that for about 3 years. I'm also a instrument instructor for airplanes, but I'm relatively new to gliders. Hope to get my commercial add-on as well as my CFIG um, here in the near future. I do have 6,400 hours specifically to working on the ground around airplanes that have propellers running. I have about 2 seasons of towing banners, and in that, a lot of times we'll have airplanes with two or maybe even five hooks and 5 hours of fuel. So it's not uncommon to drop all your hooks, land, taxiing to the grass next to the runway, right there where the ground crew is. They'll come over and hook a new hook onto the tail and bring the grappling hook portion up to the cockpit, and we'll leave the engine running the whole time during that. Also with crop dusting, same thing. You'll land, pull up to your loading pad, and then you're going to be hooking up a chemical hose, and then also pump some fuel, and the whole time you'll never shut the engine down. Also, about 5 years of experience around FBOs, where we're you know disconnecting GPUs, we're um, signaling aircraft where to park, and all that kind of stuff. So just a lot of experience working around operating aircraft. And then I never flew a skydive airplane, but I was a skydiver for a summer. I got my A license, and so same thing there. Plane lands, never shuts down. The next group boards up, and then off goes the airplane again. Um, oh, and I forgot to mention at the very beginning, I was asked to give this presentation, and then my work schedule changed, and that's why I'm pre-recording it. Um, I'm not the biggest fan of public speaking, but turns out recording this by myself is worse. I'd rather just be in the room with all of you, having back and forth interactions and asking questions and sharing stories, all that good stuff. Um, but here we go with the recording. All right, so the agenda for today, and I did lay out this agenda with, or I should say, in accordance with how the FAA wants things taught. When I was going through my flight instructor training, I remember the one of the big things that kind of got pushed all the way through it was the law of primacy. And so the first thing heard, the first thing learned, is the first thing remembered by a student. And so when we're teaching, we want to explain the proper way, the right way to do a task, and then we can talk about all the wrong ways to do it, and then recap with the proper way to do it again. And so that's why our agenda today is we're talking about the safe practices and how do we approach the tow plane. We're going to identify the hazard itself, review the Swiss cheese model, which is kind of neat, and then I'll discuss what not to do, um, and then lastly we'll review the safe practices again. All right, so safe practices. First thing we need to teach people is the thread itself. So that's the propeller up front. Everybody knows that. That's everything that we do from here on forward is to keep people away from that propeller. Um, you know, getting right up to it and not getting hit isn't good enough. We need to set broader standards that keep people further and further away from it. And also, some trigger points where if they do cross this line, then we need to go have a chat with them to make sure that they don't get into the red zone there. And also, we don't talk about very often, but I do want to include flight control surfaces when we're working on these airplanes. We want to keep people out of those areas as well. And for some that might not know, when we talk about the strut, that's that bar that goes from the bottom of the fuselage up to about the midpoint of the wing. That's the strut. I like to point that out because people that might be coming from the automotive industry or automotive histories, they might think the strut has something to do with the wheels. But in this case, that's the strut that we're talking about. So here's a top view of a beautiful Cessna 182, just like what we used to tow with. When we approach the airplane, maybe we're handing a tow ticket off or we need to have a communication with our tow pilot. Between these two arrows is the ideal place to enter and exit the area of the aircraft. And of course, we want to do it from the left side, the pilot side. So we want to approach the tow plane only from behind the wing at approximately about a 45-degree angle. We want to remain behind the strut at all times. And then we want to exit the way that we came. So just turn around and exit right back out between the main wing and the tail, kind of in that 45-degree area. And then what I really want to emphasize here, because I'm sure a lot of you in the room are kind of nodding and saying, yeah, I know that. But I really want to have that group of people set good examples for our new people, for our student pilots, for our trainees, maybe for the family members that come out with the student. Maybe they're not going to fly themselves, but sometimes they jump in and start assisting with the tow operation, which is good and helpful, but also that only works if we've been setting really, really good examples for them as they've been observing us work. So again, keep people away from the propeller, stay away from the flight controls. Safe practice is continued. Do we have good eye contact with the tow pilot? If we got that good eye contact, then he knows we're approaching. It's obviously it's a lot safer scenario in that case. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes the tow plane is way out in front of the glider. He's been sitting there for a while. Maybe he's doing his paperwork. Maybe the tow pilot didn't. I'm sorry, the glider pilot. Maybe he didn't have his tow ticket ready to go, so he fills it out. And in that case, we're kind of going to sneak up behind the tow plane and hand that ticket off. But it's a lot better to have all those other things done beforehand, so we can make good eye contact with the tow plane as he comes around and get that ticket out to him. Is the tow plane completely stopped? We don't want to be setting an example for our new people by creeping out to the airplane while it's still rolling into position. So, maybe just wait a little bit, let the tow plane get situated and stop, and then we can go approach it. And then kind of most importantly, do we have a valid reason for approaching the tow plane in the first place? So exchanging tow tickets, I think that's a perfectly valid reason to approach the plane. And then communication. Do we need to communicate to our tow pilot that this is a student pilot's first flight, student solo? Or, maybe we're going to do a box the wake. So the tow plane needs to take that into consideration on his tow route. Maybe we're going to do some tow signal training. So we're going to get way out of position. And we want that tow pilot to be expecting that and then respond appropriately. So it's a good training scenario for our student. Or maybe we're going to do an early release. We don't want the co-pilot to panic when all of a sudden the glider's off tow. And I shouldn't say panic. He's prepared for those situations, but it's a lot better if he knows it and it's a clean break and everybody knows what's going on. Um, but I also want to say, and again, I'm new to the operation, relatively new here, so I'm wondering if maybe we can put these communications for the tow plane on the tow ticket. Could we put that in the margins or at the very bottom, box the wake, instead of having to go up there and verbally yell behind an engine that's running. So just food for thought. Not making a decision on that or telling anybody what to do, but something to think about. And then for our tow pilots that might be in the room, I really want to emphasize that you guys can assist by parking in such a way that facilitates a safe entry for the person that might be approaching. So if we have our tow ticket holder up here and you're approaching, this might be a bad spot to park because it encourages our pedestrian to cut the corner and go underneath the wing there. Um, if you're able to safely roll forward a little bit further, then it kind of forces him to approach only from the safe area. Um, and maybe rolling forward another 30 or 40 feet is inappropriate, but maybe you could pivot and turn to the right to get that wing in front of a pedestrian. So just a couple things to think about. Also, I want to encourage the towpaths to be ready to kill the mags and or pull the mixture. For our powered pilots, we all know that the proper way to shut the engine down on a normal shutdown is to pull the mixture, but it's not the fastest way to shut the engine down. If you want to take power away from the airplane immediately, you kill the mags. There's no more spark. It's going to start winding down. But it's also not muscle memory. We normally don't shut down that way. So if you're trying to shut down as fast as possible, yeah, the mags might be quickest unless you have to think about it and then you start reaching with your right hand, then you stop. Now you're reaching with your left hand. So there's some back and forth there. Um, Something to think about. I encourage if someone approaches from the wingtip, um, maybe go ahead and kill the engine. It might be overkill. It might be the whole operation is going to stop and look and say, well, why did the tow plane just shut down? Well, that creates a really good training opportunity for everybody on the field of like, oh, somebody got out of position. Somebody wasn't really in danger yet, but they were approaching that danger area. And so we kill the plane. We have a little discussion. Not a mean one, not an embarrassing one. Just it kind of resets the tone and gets everybody back on board. Um, and honestly, this shouldn't be an all day, every day type of event. Hopefully once a month, a couple times a season is all. Hopefully that's all it takes. Um, and I'm just like everybody else. I know we don't want to have extra cycles on the starter and the battery and all that kind of stuff, but um, I think it's worth it for the safety. Another thing for the co-pilots is maybe only put your hand out the window when it's safe for someone to approach. Um, so as the tow plane lands and he's rolling out and he's kind of passing by the glider and starting that left turn into position in front, um, we don't really want to see the what I call the cowboy pose, which is where you got the Texas Ranger with his arm out ready to catch the damsel in distress as he rides by on his horse. We don't really want that as we're handing off tow tickets. Um, maybe it's fine to put your hand out with your palm facing the person and your fingers up as like a stop, not yet. And then once you get stopped and you're in position and you're ready, then you turn your hand around and kind of wave them on in and okay, now it's safe to approach. That's a really good two-way communication about um, when's a good time to approach the airplane and is everybody ready for it? Are we on the same page? And all that good stuff. Helps us not encourage somebody to cut corners. Sometimes myself included, sometimes us new people, as we get more and more comfortable and more competent, we want to start not cutting corners, but we just want to get quicker. And so, we got 6 or 7 air gliders all on the line ready to go. Sometimes we just start stepping forward a little bit before we should. And the tow pilot can assist with that. Just a very kind, very polite hand out the window that says, not quite yet. And then, all right, come on in. All right, moving on to the presentation, identifying the hazard itself. So this is a fun photo I took. We're coming back from California, and off my right wingtip is actually kind of a small thunderstorm out in the California desert. But the outflow is hitting the desert floor and creating this sandstorm underneath us. And so where we are, it's smooth and we're in the clear, but you can see what's going on around us, and it's really neat. So that kind of made me think of hazards as I was making this presentation. Um, I couldn't remember off the top of my head, but I believe our tow planes are two-blade propellers. And if we're idling at about 800 RPM, then a blade is coming through 26 times per second. And that propeller usually weighs about 56 pounds. So there's a lot of energy there, even at idle. And if we have that idle bumped up to about 1,000 RPM, which I don't think we do on ours, then if you stuck your finger out, it'd get struck 33 times in 1 second. So if you go to other tow operations, other zones, and they have maybe a 3 blade, 182 pulling, towing airplanes, and that's a 72-pound prop, and it's gonna come through 40 times per second at 800 RPM, or 50 times per second at 1,000 RPM. And so everybody already knows this, but you really, you're really just not going to have a near miss with a prop. You're not going to get brushed and kind of pushed out of the way. It's going to take a pretty big bite, and it's going to bite you several times. So not good, not good at all. Another hazard is obviously when the prop's running, it's nearly invisible. Um, it really just doesn't jump out at you, visually. When you're walking around them, you just don't see them. Um, and then they're noisy, but it's overstimulating. So you'll notice as people get closer and closer to a running airplane, they kind of they start shutting down their outside senses. They start looking more at their toes. They stop listening. They're just bombarded with stimulation, and so then they kind of start to shut down. And that's how some of these accidents begin to unfold. So again, identifying the hazard. Anything forward of the trailing edge of the wing is the danger zone. And then also anything laterally of the propeller. If anything gets picked up by that prop, a pebble, a rock, a stick, if the propeller is damaged and it starts to throw pieces, it's all going horizontal straight out, just forward of the wingtips. So even if you're outside the wingtip, and maybe you're like even a whole nother wingspan outside, you're still in a danger zone if you're lined up perfectly with that prop. So even when I'm working and I'm at different airports around the environment, and King Airs are starting or any turboprop, and I'm in line with it, I get out of line. I'll walk 30 feet forward or behind, or I'll get somewhere out. I just get really uncomfortable thinking that this thing might pick up a rock and throw something at me. And I hope to share that fear with everybody else and get them in line. All right, then aside from bodily injury, just like we talked about, we could kick rocks. It could grab a rope and throw it. The blade itself might be damaged and it might start throwing pieces or chunks, et cetera, et cetera. And then another hazard, other than the obvious of people getting injured or killed, is with every prop strike, you have to do an engine teardown to inspect it for damage. Usually that includes the crankshafts, either the flyweights themselves or the flyweight attached bolts. And then depending on what accessories are on the back of that engine, you might have to tear those down and then overhaul them or inspect them or look at them. Uh, so that's just kind of a byproduct of all of it. And now moving into the Swiss cheese model, a lot of the engineers in the room will be familiar with this and probably rolling their eyes and about to go to sleep now. For others, it's the first time they've seen it, so we're going to go through it. So essentially, you know, hazards are starting on the left side and moving to the right, and then there's no perfect defensive layer that stops all the threats. So we have multiple layers. None of them are perfect, so they stack up. Unfortunately, sometimes all the holes in all of our defensive layers, or a hole in all the layers, will align, and then a threat will go through, and it'll turn into an incident or an accident. Maybe a loss of aircraft or life. And so with that in mind, we're going to kind of go through our operation and how this might work. So hazard is in the top left, it's working its way down to the bottom right. Let's imagine we have the absolute most perfect training program that ever existed. Everybody that comes to the field gets trained and they have perfect understanding. And once they know it, they never make a mistake. That'd be great until we have an untrained observer that steps up to help. Maybe their relative is taking a check ride or near check ride and they come out to assist. And, they can see there's a gap in the on the ground crew, So they step in to assist. And we appreciate that. We thank them for it. But now our perfect training department and program has a hole in it. So the threat continues. Normally in our environment, we're working in the summer months. It's warm, it's fairly comfortable. You might have like a hat and sunglasses and stuff on, but let's pretend we're doing a winter check ride here, or maybe a winter recurrent training of some sort, and it's cold. So we're not grabbing thermals. We're just going up, doing some maneuvers and landing. That's reasonable, and we can expect that to happen in our operation. So maybe now our untrained observer is wearing headgear with scarves and earmuffs, and they got some goggles on that are fogging up because of their breath, and so their visibility is limited now. And then again, we have perfect procedures, but um, maybe we didn't have perfect adherence to our procedures as we were working in this winter environment. So maybe our observer watched a previous worker approach from in front of the wing, but behind the struts. So he's kind of in that zone where we're not supposed to be, but he cut some corners and he did that. Understanding the risks, maybe our previous worker did it, and our untrained observer watched that happen. So now he thinks that's the appropriate way to work around the airplanes. Now the last layer in our Swiss cheese model is our current equipment. All of the airplanes that we tow with at Sunflower have wing struts, and so that makes a good landmark to stay behind it. Well, maybe in our winter training scenario, somebody showed up with a Cessna 210 as a tow plane. I don't know if that's ever happened before. I've never seen or heard of a 210 towing, but if it's feasible, it makes sense that it might happen. They don't have wing struts. They just have the wing, no strut, retractable gear. Um, so now you can see where our untrained observer um, might make a mistake and get into that prop on a 210. So that's the Swiss cheese model. You might kind of think about that and all the different things that contribute to an accident. Most of all of you know, it's not just one thing; it's a whole chain of events or sequences and so on and so forth. So you might ask yourself, do my actions on a Saturday increase the chances of a prop strike on Sunday? Just because we did it and got away with it and it was clean, we might have set things in motion for an accident down the road because somebody watched us do something we weren't supposed to do. So just something to think about. All right, so now we can get into the what not to do. So obviously, don't walk in front of the tow plane. Don't walk under the wing of the tow plane. And then obviously, don't approach the tow plane without a valid reason. It's not a place to hang out. I've never seen anybody go out there and just hang out, or I've never seen a big group approach the tow plane. So I'm not saying I've seen things that need to stop. I'm just saying we're doing a good job, and we'll let's continue not doing those things. And then obviously, don't turn the prop by hand. There is a way to do it, but well, let's just leave that up to the tow pilots. If the prop is in the wrong position when it needs to be, fixed for towing or fueling or whatever, let's just leave that up to the tow pilots. They know which direction to turn it, and I don't want to get into all those details in this presentation. So again, just to recap, I think I'm guilty of this one myself. Even out there at Sunflower, I think I've come in from underneath the wingtip, in front of the aileron, behind the strut, straight towards that window. And boy, we shouldn't be doing that. It's just getting us too close to that danger zone. It puts us right underneath the ailerons. We could clonk somebody on the forehead with an aileron if we get a wind gust in the wrong direction. So we just shouldn't be doing that. And that kind of opens up the door for people coming in from more and more the wrong area. Um, and then obviously, don't walk in front of the airplane to get to the side of it. Go around behind it. So there we go. If you're outside that green line, everybody's happy. You're safe. I think you're setting a good example. If you get anywhere inside of that green line, we start to flirt with having problems. We just don't need to do that. It doesn't save any time at all. And that's one of the big takeaways I think is um, both at Sunflower and at other airports, myself included, we will take a huge risk to save 5 seconds at most, and then we'll find somewhere else in the operation where we totally waste 3 to 5 minutes So just don't take huge risks to save just a fraction amount of time. Just go ahead and walk all the way around that wingtip. Keep everybody nice and safe. Set a good example. All right, and tow pilots, what not to do. Some of these we already talked about. Um, so don't allow the ground crew to normalize cutting the corner, and that's where I was talking about. Go ahead and shut the engine down. Um, Kind of make a moment out of it, but not to insult anybody or embarrass them or anything like that, but just to really drive home that yep, anytime you get in the wrong spot, I'm going to shut the engine off, and um, and then we didn't save any time. So so just go on around the wingtip. I've never seen this here at Sunflower, but just in general, don't start the engine without a 3 to 5 count after yelling clear. We've all seen it. How many times do you hear clear and then the engine start immediately? The clear is a warning, and you need to give people time to respond to that warning. So if anybody was in the wrong spot and you didn't see them and you yell clear, there needs to be a kind of a hesitation for them to either yell at you or to roll out of the way or whatever it is. So myself, I like to yell clear and then double check the brakes are on, make sure the beacon is on, make sure the battery's on, make sure the fuel tanks are on both. So I do the 4 Bs: brakes, beacon, battery, fuel to both, and then I go ahead and crank. Don't park in a way that encourages ground crew to walk in the danger area. We already kind of talked about that with previous diagrams. And now we're going to start talking about some propeller accidents. So what really sparked this training topic this particular month is just about 2 weeks ago on October 26th this year at Cook Airfield, just on the other side of Wichita. Skydiving operation did have a fatal injury with a prop strike. I don't know all the exact details. I don't think the exact details are really that important. The takeaway is it was a young lady that was a skydiver. She could jump by herself, so she was familiar with the operation. And I think that particular day she was hired or working as a photographer for the operation, or maybe just one single jumper. Again, that detail doesn't really matter. The point is she was at the airplane that was running. A group was boarding, a group of skydivers. She had a parachute pack on herself, and she was in front of the wing strut taking photos of the group that was boarding. And then, so she's in that danger zone. She's really focused on doing a good job, taking those great photos and stuff. And then she took 1 or 2 steps backward, and then that prop got her and just drug her in, and she didn't survive. So it's a horrible thing. It's close to home. And like I said before, there's a lot of similarities between that operation and ours. We're recreational. We're out there to try to have fun. Um, we have senior veterans that know what they're doing. We have new trainees that we're setting examples for. Um, so we just really gotta be careful. We'll talk about a couple more. This one I wasn't aware of, but about a year ago, at an Air Force base in California, there was a non-military, civilian contractor working around either a Predator drone or a Reaper drone, one of those big ones, and walked into the running propeller, and that was fatal. Um, Most of you might remember this one. I know I did. So just after Christmas, on New Year's Eve, in Montgomery, Alabama, a Southwest Airlines employee was pulled into the jet engine, and that was fatal. Um, Horrible deal. I think she was a single mom and had 2 kids, right around the holidays. So just bad deal. Um, on October 16th of 22 in Georgia, my understanding was there was a gentleman that rented an aircraft, even though he was the passenger, and him and his girlfriend or him and his date got flown to dinner. I don't know if the accident happened as they exited for dinner or after dinner and they got home, but again, those details don't really matter. The point is, they landed, pilot did not shut down. The female passenger exited and went to the back of the airplane, while the male pilot exited and went around the front of the airplane and got caught up in the prop, and that was fatal. On date night here, so just horrible. And then this one, I think most people might remember. Back in December of 2011, down in Dallas, there was a model. So this got a lot of news. passenger. They flew around the Dallas area looking at Christmas lights, and then they landed. Pilot did not shut down. She exited, walked around to the front of the airplane to kind of wave thank you or goodbye or whatever. And she ended up surviving, but she lost her eye and her hand. Um, so these things happen. They happen often. We're not immune from it. We just really got to be careful um, and keep doing what we're doing. So here's our propeller accident. This is why we don't turn the prop here. So I think what he's doing, I think he's pulling the prop through prior to actually hand propping it. Boy, that was close. I think he got away. I don't think it got him, but boy, that sure was close. We'll just watch it one more time here. Yep. So that's why we don't want to be doing that. We don't want to be encouraging anybody to do it. Just leave that up to the tow pilots. They know what they're doing. Another one that just kind of shows people, the general public operating around aircraft that are running. Just really bad scenario. Yep. So in that one, you could hear people yelling at him, which boy, that's just a bad scenario all the way. That these people are yelling at him, trying to warning me, "Hey, don't go that way, don't go that way." But the direction they're yelling from encourages him to turn towards the threat. Towards the direction they don't want him to turn. So that's where we just have to be really careful when we're operating on the glider port, and we're setting examples for the observers, for the new students, for the trainees, everybody. Um, you know, it's just a almost a too comfortable environment out there on the runway. We get groups of people out there where and so to the untrained observer, they watch that and they think, "Oh, I can go out there too," and then they do, and nobody really talks to them or says, "Hey, yeah, you can be out here, but here's the threats. Here's what you need to watch out for." We just need to be really careful about what we encourage and what we allow and how we handle um, people being out there. All right, so now we're going to review our safe practices again. So obviously, keep people away from the propeller, keep them away from the flight controls, and again, that's the strut. So enter from about the 45-degree angle from behind the wing at all times, not underneath it. Remain behind that strut when you're up there at the window, and then exit from behind the wing. And again, all of this on the left side of the airplane where the pilot is. We don't want to approach from the right side. And then, like I've already said multiple times, beating the dead horse here, but set a good example. Do it the right way. Do it blatantly. Be flamboyant about doing it the right way. We don't want to walk right on the edge of the line all the time. Just get right in that safe zone and let people see you doing that. All right, that's right. Stay away from the prop. Stay away from the flight controls. Again, for the tow pilots, park in a way that facilitates a safe entry for our ground operators. So maybe don't stop like that. Maybe stop in that area if you can, within reason. Whatever the environment allows. And then be ready to kill the mags or pull the mixture if somebody gets in the wrong position. Um, if like you had a small child that was like bolting towards that prop, you're probably not going to get it completely stopped by the time he gets there, but it won't be nearly as bad, obviously. I mean, that goes without saying. But the big thing is killing it once in a while when somebody gets a little bit out of line helps keep everybody in line all the time. And then only put your hand out the window, ready to receive a ticket when it's safe for somebody to start approaching the airplane from whatever position they're at from that airplane at that time. So just good judgment, good habits. And that's the end of the presentation. Again, I wish I was there in person so we could have discussion and have some back and forth and some stories and whatnot. But even without me being there, I'm sure you guys will do that on your own. And thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Stay safe.